James O'Keefe joins us now to discuss all of this. James, always a pleasure. Great work as always, too, with this.
Thank you, Dana.
So first off, I have to immediately ask, what are I have a million questions actually for you, but I was very immediately distracted by one of the individuals listed in one of the transcripts that you have. This guy's described as the Antifa fight instructor. So I have never, in all of the peaceful protests in which I've taken part in which you're familiar with, we've never had anything like a fight instructor or someone to help with jail or anything like that, because we were never planning on doing anything that actually caused harm or destruction. This seems really indicative of the fact that they are in due. Tell me about this.
Thank you, Dana. This is a training that was given to Antifa, talking about getting a good liver shot, crippling them, poking out the eyes, the nose. This is the first time anybody has successfully infiltrated Antifa ever before. And there's two tapes released last week. First in Oregon, they're talking about gouging out people's eyes. And what they say in these tapes, which is very interesting, Antifa in New York City said, RefuseFA is the name of the entity. RefuseFA training instructor, fight instructor named Chris, says we have to reframe the idea of self-defense. So Dana, if you're defending your home or property with a shotgun or whatever, that's self-defense. But according to these Antifa people, they're going to, quote, reframe the idea of self-defense as not simply being acted upon. So this is a violent methodology, and they're training people how to hurt other people. That appears to be their end game, according to the training.
Yeah. So aggression now is defense, and these videos, because you were in Portland, I think it was the Rose City Antifa. Some of these are the I guess the ones that have been out and at least publicly organized the longest. And and obviously more videos to come, and people can go to projectveritas.com to see those. What is their ultimate goal? I mean, is it just chaos? Because I can't, there's nothing ever organized from this group. It seems again, like, is it correct to say this is some like a new iteration of just like Occupy and Weather, the Weather Underground and that? But this seems way more well funded, a lot more well organized. What is the difference between this and some of these violent leftist groups that we have seen previously?
Well, I think the main difference is that it's more mainstream now. The main difference is that they're rioting in New York City. That has not occurred in my lifetime at this scale. It is occurring. They're not getting prosecuted. In fact, the district attorney announced yesterday that they're not going to prosecute some of the people doing some of the things in New York. But the other difference is that it appears to me that they're getting their goal is insurrection. So one of their manuals that they give out, and maybe people read, is The Coming Insurrection. The book is called The Coming Insurrection. So it's chaos, it's anarchy. I would characterize their philosophy as nihilism. They don't really believe in anything. They want to cause chaos and inflict violence. That appears to be their end game. And again, it goes back to their own words. This is Chris, the Antifa fight instructor, saying he wants to reframe self-defense. He wants to reframe it as not simply being acted upon. So it's kind of an irrational philosophy, Dana. There's no logic to it. 2 + 2 = 5, according to these people. They just believe that we need to inflict violence on people and create a sense of anarchy and chaos because of the system. So what we want to do is expose what their training is. And then this coming week, we're going to release more tapes of their training and even potentially some insight into who's funding them.
Yes, and we've been talking about not just your expose on the show also, but the new classification for Antifa as a terrorist organization, which is going to allow for more legal pathways to go. And as you said, where are these individuals getting their money from? I mean, how are they making this happen? There were 3 people, Antifa members, that were arrested for, looting an Austin Target. But obviously these from New York and in D.C. and elsewhere, this is an international organization. And you even discussed, too, and this was actually a surprise to me, you actually discussed they have more sophisticated admission requirements. Talk to me about this, because I've never heard anything like this with a leftist group before.
Yeah, I mean, so our undercover reporter spent a long time trying to get into this Antifa Portland Rose City, and it's really sophisticated. Like we've done, you've known me for a decade. Whether it's walking in off the street or actually trying to infiltrate or go undercover, I've seen the gamut. I mean, but I've been able to pretty much get access to a lot of these groups, whether it's the Hillary Clinton campaign or Google or Facebook or Planned Parenthood. This was the hardest one. They actually take your phone away from you when you go into the bookstore in Portland where they have their trainings. This is a bookstore that recently closed, but we had filmed this some time ago. And they actually put your phone, they have like a white noise machine, they make you put your stuff in a bag, and then they really are really paranoid. It's almost like they're getting training, like a company, like a counterintelligence operation. So they're not amateurs. They know what they're doing. They're sophisticated, and it's quite something to look at. So our undercover reporter got into this training. They sat them down. They had a PowerPoint presentation, and they taught you things about how to gouge people's eyes out.
Yeah.
And they also reject masculine, traits. These folks did, for example, our reporter didn't make the cut eventually because he was too alpha in their mind.
He didn't make their group because he came off as too alpha.
That's correct.
This is just, well, it's just crazy. I mean, it really is. And some of the videos and some of the things that they say and the things that we know that Antifa has done that we've seen. I mean, we've watched Andy Ngo. He's in a lawsuit now. He filed against Antifa following their beating of him in 2019. That seems to be the language. I mean, it's chaos and violence, and they believe that their violence is justified because they have convinced not just themselves but supporters that any disagreement of speech, if you're disagreeing with them, that speech by itself is violence. But bizarrely, their actual violence is speech. Have there been any Democrats that have come out on record condemning Antifa violence? I mean, has Joe Biden ever been put on record saying whether or not he condemns this? Because it's all seemingly done for their gain. Not
to my knowledge, but I'm a very big fan of George Orwell's 1984. In fact, I was born in the year 1984, and I love that book, and I've read it multiple times. And it's just an example of this whole idea of double speak or double think. You say speech is violence, silence is violence. It doesn't matter to these. Again, it's the philosophy of nihilism. Nothing matters. It's an irrational philosophy. I tried to read it, Dana, and kind of felt like glass shards against my brain trying to make sense of this irrational philosophy just to commit violence against people for no other reason than violence. I guess the biggest thing, Dana, the press has said is that this group doesn't exist. It's not a group. That's what we've heard. It's not a group. Now, if you look up the definition of group in Webster's dictionary, you'll find that it is a group. They have trainings. They refer to themselves as Antifa or Refuse FA. And there's even an organizer in this group, Refuse FA. We have his name, we have his number, and we have tape coming out about him this coming week.
Oh, I can't wait to see the other videos that you're going to drop. ProjectVeritas.com is the website. One last quick question for you, James. Is it a fear, do you think, from on the left for everything that we've seen after the death of George Floyd and the protest, for Black Lives Matter or Black activists to turn on Antifa? I feel as though there is a really huge effort to prevent that from happening, especially when you point out that a lot of the violence and destruction, I've seen a lot of really skinny, fat white dudes on camera, in black attire, throwing bricks through windows. The majority of it, of Dallas footage, it looked to be like Antifa folks, the people that carry the Antifa flag also. Do you think that there's a real fear of Antifa and Black Lives Matter or other groups kind of opposing each other and squaring off? I feel like there's a little bit of unsettled ground with everything happening.
Good question. And from what I saw on the tapes, and especially in Oregon, there wasn't one African-American member of that group, Antifa, not one. It was, and I'm not trying to put words. This is what they were saying in the tapes. Our reporter was too alpha. Our reporter was a member of a minority group, and they didn't like him because he was too masculine looking. You have a lot of skinny white people in this group. Different sexual orientations, different ways like that. But we had no African American interactions within Antifa, but they talked about white supremacy a lot.
Right.
They wanted to most of their philosophy was doing this against what they would call racism. But I can't really speak to the difference between the Black Lives Matter movement and Antifa. I can only speak about these are majority white, sort of skinny jeans, the very much the stereotype that you would think.
Exactly.
And our reporter not making the final cut
Gosh.
because he's too much of a macho man. Very interesting.
That's, you know what?
And by the way, I just want to make one pitch before we end this. A lot of the folks, Dana, coming to us are coming on the inside now. They have a conscience. They reject what these organizations are doing. So Veritas tips at protonmail.com. That's VERITAS tips at protonmail.com. If you're on the inside of Antifa or Refuse Fa or any of these groups and you have a conscience, we'll help you. We'll tell your story. We'll give you a camera.
Awesome. ProjectVeritas.com. James O'Keefe, keeping that torch of real investigative journalism going. A nation's grateful. James, always a pleasure. We'll be following it.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you. Take care.